I don't know why I was scared from the car.
An old Beetles Volkswagen car was the safest car to have.
And he was saying to me, "Mommy, why I cannot move my hands?"
I was driving my car that day on the highway. I was going to another Christian service to be the usher at actually a church meeting. I was driving with one of my friends, used to be with me in the car, and it was about iftar time in Egypt. And around that time, usually cars drive very, very fast because they want to catch up with iftar, because that's the first meal they get. And exactly around that time, it was around 6:30 p.m. around that day, and it was a Friday, I had my car accident.
Okay, so what type of car was it?
Well, we had many controversies about what kind of car to get me, my parents, because as my first car, they wanted to get a very safe car, not a car that can get easily bent or can get easily dent in any accident or bumped. So my parents and the mechanics tried to convince my parents that an old Beetles Volkswagen car was the safest car to have. It never reverses, or it never flips, or it never gets any accident. It can take down.
It's very hard.
It's very hard, and it can take down a whole building. And apparently, I actually flipped the car 360 degrees, and it was actually paper flat on the ground.
The car was not my idea at all. I was against that. But his father was for the idea, because he was always want him to be a man and bold and something like that. So we said, this is the Beetles, the Volkswagen Beetles, and this is the car we can bring it for you. So he make it fancy for him, and he drove the car, but I was not really happy about it. I don't know why I was scared from the car. I didn't like it.
Can you tell us exactly what happened in the accident? What made the safest car flip and flat on the...
I was driving at 70 kilometers per hour. I actually discovered that a car jumped right in front of me, so I tried to dodge it. Instantly, that's self-reflex. So I actually turned the steering wheel on my far right. I remember a car hitting me from my far right, which is the passenger seat, which drove me exactly on the sidewalk between both roads. And I remember that two wheels was actually on the sidewalk, and the other two wheels was on the road. And I didn't have any control at all over the steering wheel. And I kept telling my friend, I can't go down on the road, I can't go down on the road. And I remember hitting one lighting pole, and then the screen blacked out in front of me. Fortunately that the engine stopped, otherwise we would have been barbecued, my friend and I. The roof actually squished me down in the driver's seat, but the only two people in the car that would actually get affected by this hit was me and the person sitting behind the passenger seat. So the passenger seat and the person behind me wouldn't get affected.
Somebody was coming and taking me from my hand. He said, Manu did an accident. All what I thought that the car was damaged, or he just did an accident with a car, with another car, which is not very strange, or it's okay. If the car is not going to be used anymore, this will be very good. I will be very happy about it. I said, which accident? He said, he's in the hospital. Hospital? So it's something very strong. So I begin to scream. I said, which hospital? I couldn't know what I was saying. So I was screaming and crying. And I asked somebody to drive the car, to drive my car.
Our location was near an ambulance that actually is a standby in the middle of that road. That's the stand place. So the medic there actually took us out from the car. My friend, there was no problem. I actually lost consciousness immediately after the accident. I don't remember anything at all. But my friend was conscious, so he actually got out normally from the car. He's perfectly fine. And the people, I had actually the seatbelt on, so they had to cut the seatbelt and drag me out from the car. I suspect that people tilted my head, the paramedic that got me out tilted my head all the way to the right, and then tried to, because they couldn't cut the car around me. They don't do that in Egypt. They try to get you out of it. And he got me out of the chair, which I was really squished in.
Okay.
That bending of my neck, I think that's the main reason that caused the fracture in my spinal cord in level C4 and C5. And that's the main reason why I'm completely paralyzed today.
The accident now, it's 8 years and a half. And if I say it, I remember exactly every minute of it, as if it was yesterday. I heard the ambulance coming, and Manu was on the stretcher, and he was looking to me with blood on his face, and all his clothes was torn, and he was saying to me in English, "Mommy, why I cannot move my hands?" In that time, I hate that I was a doctor, because anybody else couldn't know that. Maybe it's shock or something. I cannot move my hands, he said this. So I tried to hold myself, and I told him, Habibi, it's not a big deal, just from the shocks, just from something like that, and you will be okay. We'll stay a few days in the hospital and we'll go back home, no problem. And they said the spinal cord is partially cut. I don't know, who can take such talk? Who can take such a speech, and not me, anybody, and can stand on his feet? The surgeon came out and he told me, "We're sorry, he will be quadriplegic." Quadriplegic means that he cannot move his hands and legs. Both, quadri means four, for all his life.
I stayed unconscious for a complete 2 months. I will use, even though my eyes might be open, but I wouldn't see anything in front of my eyes.
So when was the first time you were conscious after that? What do you remember at that time?
Sometimes I used actually to wake up while I was unconscious in the 2-month period. And I remembered a couple of times seeing a couple of my university friends, because my hospital actually was very close from my university, so a lot of them would come in their breaks and visit me. So I would remember seeing some of them in front of my eyes, and they would say some stuff, but I'm unaware what they're saying really. But I remember seeing 2 of them. I remember seeing one of my professors there in front of the hospital bed, and he was crying actually, you know. And I remember seeing my father once, and I remember seeing my mother all the time outside from the window, because no one was actually allowed to come in the room except for no more than a couple of minutes, and then they had to go out. But I couldn't actually talk for a year and 3 months. I had a different tracheostomy in my throat than the one that is now. It used to be a plastic tracheostomy and it used to be open, so I couldn't speak. So I was kind of muted for a whole year and 3 months.
I see how God was doing miracles in his life. The oxygen level was down, and all the doctors didn't know why. When he was in the intensive care in Sinus, they make for him an operation called a tracheostomy. They open his throat. The secretion could concentrate in it. So nobody knows, and nobody could detect that a piece of secretion was very hard and it blocks the way. So he couldn't He couldn't breathe. Nobody could, no one of these doctors detected. The nurse came and she was just doing something that she was not intended to do it, and the tracheostomy get out of his throat. But she didn't want to do that, that it comes by mistake. And they found this kind of secretion inside the tracheostomy, and he breathes very well. Nobody, they all said that this is a miracle, because if it stays more longer than that and nobody can detect it, who can know that the lack of oxygen is from the blockage of the tracheostomy? Nobody can detect that.
أول ما سمعت وجريت على المستشفى وكان موجود في الانتنسيف كير. أنا الحقيقة منظر مانو في الانتنسيف كير منظر أنا ببقى نفسي كأنه ذاكرتي تتمسح منها المنظر ده، لأنه كان منظر قاسي جدا. إنه شاب في كوما محطوط على الفنتيليتر، على جهاز التنفس الصناعي، متركب له خراطيم كتيرة، معمول له تراكيوستومي تيوب. منظر مانو كان صعب جدا جدا جدا. لما بقيت أروح للمستشفى وأسأل الدكاترة المتخصصين، لأن أنا دكتورة، فبقيت أسأل دكاترة كتار على حالة مانو، فالحقيقة كل الدكاترة قالوا لي ما تحطوش أمل إنه مانو هيعيش. قالوا لي لو مانو ما ماتش بسبب المرض وبسبب الحادثة، مانو هيموت من الكومبليكيشنز، من المضاعفات اللي هتحصل له، من الباد سورز، من الشيست انفكشن، من حاجات كتيرة قوي. صعب إنه مانو يعيش. لكن أنا شفت نادية وهي في المستشفى، شفت نادية وهي بتطرق كل باب ينفع تطرقه علشان مانو. طرقت كل الأبواب. كنت بحسها إنها إنسانة صبورة جدا، مش بتكل، كأنها فاتحة مستشفى عندها في البيت. اتعلمت أدق التفاصيل علشان إزاي تعرف تعتني بمانو. الحقيقة أنا مرات بقول لها نادية أنت تستحق إن احنا نعمل لك تمثال، لأنه اللي أنت صنعتيه مع ابنك حاجة يحكى عنها.
So, tell me more details about the period after you became conscious. How do you feel? What was happening at this point in time?
Okay, right after the accident, I knew that I was in a car accident, because I knew that because it was my car and I was driving. And I saw my friend in the accident. He was actually coming behind me in the trolley, and he kept calling my name, Mano, Mano. And so I knew that an accident occurred. I knew I was in a hospital. I tried to get up from the bed. I couldn't get up from the bed. So I tried to ask people around me, the doctors, why can't I get up? No one answered, until one of the doctors that I knew personally came in the room. And I told him, doctor, I'm trying to get up, but I can't. What did you guys do? Like I told you guys in the first episode, I used to go to the gym, so I had a little bit of strength. So I can free myself if I was actually tied. So I told him, how come you tie me so strong like this that I can't really move from the bed at all? So he said, well, there is no need for you to get up, just you're a little bit tired for the time being after the accident, and you're spending a few days with us. I remember I had some finals at the school at the time, so I told him, well, I have a final today. I inquired about the date, and I found out that I have a final today. So I said, well, doctor, I have a final today. I have to go to school. Please let me go. He said, well, no, it's okay for you to stay with us, and I dropped unconscious again.
I didn't tell him what was his problem. He didn't know. Till we went to Germany, he didn't know what was his problem. And I said to everybody to come to see him, don't tell him what he had. Because what's good in telling him, or in tell just a young man of 19 years old that you will be paralyzed all your life? First of all, I don't believe in that. I believe that God will save him. So I don't want to say negative words and leave God do the positive.
How did you feel in the time that you were not speaking in? Who did you talk to? How did you speak with God, for example? How did it feel at that time?
During the entire time at the hospital, the first 4.5 years, my time awake or my time being conscious was very limited. And I was under medication all the time. So
that's for the year and a half?
The first year and a half, yes.
Okay.
And that would give me actually sleeping medicine. I had like a cannula, injected in my hand.
Yeah.
And they would give me sleeping medicine each night in order for me to sleep. Because I took medications that would keep me awake, and they would give me other medications in order for me to sleep at night. I couldn't speak. My mom was with me from day one in the accident for the entire 8 years that the accident has actually taken. So she was with me in every hospital I went. She would sleep at a bed next to me, or sometimes there was only one room in the hospital available for me, so she would sleep on a chair for the first year and a half. So she was the one close to me all the time, and whenever I would speak something, so by time she understood all my speech and everything that I wanted to say, and she could read my lips, and she would translate to the other people.
Manu had his mobile, and he had an answer machine on his mobile saying, "Hi, I'm Emmauel, leave your message," something like that. And I had his mobile with me in Germany. So every time I wanted to hear to his voice, I just press on the button and just leave and just hear to his voice. When we went to Germany, they tried to take care of the bed sores. So they did 4 major operations in Germany for the bed sores. And they did an operation in his stomach, just make a tube to feed him like a rail, but in the stomach itself, so we can feed him by syringe. Again, it was another miracle, because one doctor from Germany came over and he did the whole job, first of all. The second thing, that we take the German visa without going to the embassy, which is not feasible at all. We get the visa, and they came to the part that they need 900,000 pounds for 3 months. So they came to tell me that. So I said, well, we already spend a lot of money in the hospitals, so we don't have this amount of money to go to Germany. So the newspaper told me, just tell me what is the sequence and what is the expenses and what he's going to do and all this kind of stuff, and we will see, and the Lord will do it. So he put it on the newspaper. In 19 days, we had the amount of money. In 19 days. People were paying like crazy, even Muslim people. We couldn't believe it. It was, for us, this is another miracle. And they did the operation, and the doctors, one of the operation was costing 150,000 euro. They do it with 15,000 euro. You cannot believe that, but we just see it with our eyes, and the Lord was just talking loudly with us that I'm here, I'm doing the whole things. The Orthodox Church, Father Bulus of Orthodox Church, and Bishop Damian of Germany was always visiting us, just driving for 3 hours in the winter to come to see Manu and to pray with him and to bring all the kind of things that he needed.
After the first 9 months, I believe, or 10 months of the accident, I went to Germany. And within my stay in Germany, I got a visit by a German doctor. He was a professor in spinal cord injury or something. And he said that after the accident, you had a fracture in level C4 and C5. That's why you are completely paralyzed. And you are not expected to live for long. I don't know how you are been alive for first year. You should have been dead in the first couple of weeks of the accident, because Christopher Reeve, who used to play the role of Superman, had an accident from a horseback riding, and he couldn't stay alive for long despite all his wealth and everything, and you're not expected to live for long. Of course, I was shocked to know that. I knew it was serious. I thought that, like any other accident, you go in the hospital for a couple of days, you go out, you know, as brand as new. So nothing wrong with this, but I actually didn't know that you can fully be paralyzed, completely paralyzed. So I was diagnosed that I was a high-level quadriplegic with loss of all motor and sensory movements in my entire body, starting from the neck down.
Okay.
I didn't know what paralyzation was because I never actually saw anyone getting paralyzed or seen any case that was paralyzed. I knew what a paraplegic was, which is your legs are only paralyzed. I've seen examples such as this, but I would always consider, and I still consider, a paralyzed person as a normal functioning human being because he can do everything. And I know when you grow older, your functions becomes to decrease. But I never saw what a completely paralyzed person was.
So that was a shock at that time.
That was a great shock for me because not only the situation is serious, but my days are counted to live. Because the doctor words where you will have only a few days or maybe 1 or 2 weeks at most, and then you will die because a condition like yours, especially that I had some open bed sores in my body because my skin was starting to fade away and my bones were about to show. So he's saying that your wounds are way too deep, and I think it was level 4 or something. So your days are numbered on earth.
I said, okay, thank you. We are not waiting upon medicine. We are waiting upon the Lord. Thank you. I left him. I went to the room. Mano was just pale like a piece of lemon, and his tears were just coming like this. I told him, do you believe this man? He looked at me. He wasn't talking at the time. He looked at me. I said, this man is talking by the language of the word. We are not talking by this language. We are waiting on God. And when you will be on your feet, this will be the first one to come to Jesus, and he will kneel in front of the cross. He will be the first one to know Jesus.
What happened to allow you to speak that way? Because you were saying that you were muted for quite a while, and something happened that made you speak.
2 weeks before I leave from Germany, the doctors there at the ENT department, as I was saying, the chief doctor actually, he actually inserted a metal tube inside my throat that it's called a speaking valve. What that does is that it has like a little shutter that shuts whenever I speak. If you can hear the beeping sound in my throat,
Yes.
and then it opens again whenever I breathe.
Okay.
So that's how I was, and that's how I speak. And that actually didn't take any time at all. And I regained my same voice strength back.
When I first came to see him, because of a problem with the tracheostomy, which is an opening, it's a surgical opening in the front of the neck to let him breathe adequately after the accident, because we have to know that after the motor car accident, there was a high transection of the cervical spinal cord, which affects the breathing and the respiration, interfering with the normal respiration. So there should be a tracheostomy, which is an opening through the trachea so that he could respire through, and as well we can do suction to remove any secretions within the lung and within the bronchi that he could not expel adequately in a normal way.
Do you recall what was the first thing you said, or who was the first person you want to speak to, or something like that?
I don't remember what was the first words out of my mouth. I mean, it wasn't the first time that I began to speak, but I was fortunate that I regained the same voice strength that I had, because I was told that my voice might be a little bit weaker, and it might change. And I heard some people that done operations in their throats that he was a man, and he came out, his voice actually turned to be a female's voice.
Okay.
But I was fortunate that my voice was exactly the same tone and with the same strength. The first person I spoke to was, of course, my mom, because she was with me at the hospital the whole time.
Well, when he first talked, I couldn't believe it. I just get back to it was his normal voice, the voice I was used to. It was really joy. It really was a miracle. It was a gift from God, whatever you want to name it, but it was really a big jump from what we were living in and when he started to speak.
I met Mano when a friend of mine from Finland was his nurse, and she had asked me to deliver something to him. He had left such a big impact on her. She had spoken to me a lot about him. When I went to see Mano for the first time, I was just a person delivering something. I did not expect to meet him. I was actually very worried about meeting people who were going through such a tragic situation. So I went with a friend to drop off what I was supposed to deliver. I met his mother, Nadia, and was immediately touched by her warmth, her strength, and how she was able to smile. I was thinking the whole time, you know, this lady has just been through a very tragic experience, and she must have a lot of faith to be able to go through this and be nice to people and be very hospitable, ask you what you want to drink, give you a hug, thank you very much for what you brought. And then she asked me a question. She was like, would you like to meet Mano? And I was a bit, of course, worried. I mean, I didn't know the person. I didn't know what to say. How do you comfort somebody who's been through something so difficult? And she turned on the light. He was sleeping. She woke him up. He flashed me a very big smile. His voice was barely audible because of the tube that he had at the time. And immediately, I started talking to him, of course. Hi, how are you? Introduced myself. I think 5 minutes into the conversation, I really, sorry, I got emotional. 5 minutes into the conversation, I made a friend. It was very difficult for me to imagine, but I made a friend. He had so much charm. He was very funny. He was incredibly funny. I mean, he was barely audible, but he was extremely, extremely funny. And I left having made a new friend.
I want you to carry my cross because I cannot carry it any longer.
He began to read the Bible. He began to make all the Facebook.
Wake up, Mano, right parent. My life transformed from the physical life to a purely electronic life.